Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View. Celtic travel to Motherwell this weekend. Celtic do travel to Motherwell this weekend, and with only one first team recognised striker. It looks like Daniel Cummins will get the nod. Daniel Cummins will get the nod this weekend to be the recognised striker along with Adam Ida. But there's a lot of Celtic fans are scratching their head this morning. We're now in the 1st of January. I don't want to go over old ground by the way that Brendan Rodgers was talking about. We knew the situation with Kyogo, but does it look like that Celtic have been priced out the transfer market this transfer window again by Brøndby? And Brøndby kind of priced us out about a season, this time last year, was it not? Maybe even this summer, when they added an extra couple of $100,000. Now they're actually adding millions onto the price. If Celtic really want the player, you think they would have got him by now? But there was, it's the 1st of February now. It's the 1st of February today. And the transfer window should have closed last night. But UEFA have changed it for the most part of Europe because of Thursday night football in the Europa, which didn't give teams a lot of time to close the transfer window yesterday. So the transfer window now closes on Monday evening, allowing Celtic just that little bit extra time. But is the extra time that's been well spent? That's the question that you need to ask. But it came out last night that Celtic are after the Slovan Bratislava striker that came up blank against Celtic in the Champions League, but he did score. I think he scored one or two, I'm not too sure. But anyway, it looks like the Celtic have turned from Matej being their number one choice to the Slovan Bratislava. And I thought, what is Brendan and Paul Tisdale really doing? You know, it was meant to be this new dawn and bringing in transfer things. But anyway, we do face Motherwell this weekend. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Even though it's a dog. Anyway, and Brendan Rodgers hit out yesterday and people were saying, why are Celtic fan media? I mean, I'm not fan media. I don't go to press conferences. I'm a YouTuber. Why are YouTubers talking about the prospect of a ban after the flare? But I think we spoke about it yesterday. But Brendan Rodgers hit out at the Celtic supporter whose shameful pyro antics left the club fearing that they'll have no fans against Bayern Munich in Germany. He says that the latest disciplinary notice from UEFA should be a line in the sand moment for those who continue to ignore warnings. After flares were sent off against Borussia Dortmund, and that was a bit OTT, but for all the good that ultras bring to Celtic, I'm old enough and I remember a time when the whole stadium was rocking and they didn't need an ultras section. We never needed an ultras section. The whole stadium was just bouncing for the whole game. And I know that a lot of our fans have gotten older and they're not bouncing about the way that they used to, and the younger fan base have went down the road of the ultras scene. They've been led astray. Have they been led astray? Have the younger Celtic generational fans been led astray by the bygone era of what was Celtic Park? And because there's only one section of Celtic Park, and there's a question for you: have Celtic facilitated this new modern fan? He scored against Atletico. Well, that'll do. Have Celtic facilitated the new modern fan, and have they helped shape? Have Celtic advertently helped shape the modern football fan in the younger generation? I'm not talking about the older guys that have been there and done it, and the ones that Brendan Rodgers were talking about. And you've got to remember that Brendan Rodgers does know a lot of guys that go to away games in Europe. And I'm not talking about the suits. And I'm talking about normal fans. He does know a lot of them personally. His brother still goes on the bus that comes out of Belfast. You know, there's a family connection there. Brendan Rodgers knows how disappointed the Celtic fans that have spent a lifetime And I'm talking before 2006, before the Green Brigade had come along. I'm talking lifetime following Celtic. You know, guys that are now in their 50s and that have generally spent a lifetime since they were kids following Celtic. Week in, week out. Been there, worn the badge. You know, guys that I know that still go to games, we can remember when it was £5 for the bus and £5 to get in. Now, there's older guys on this channel that will remember when it was even cheaper to get into a game. But Brendan Rodgers has, he was very measured with his words. He was very measured with his words, not to point out a section of the fans or a type of fan. But what he said after the flares against, when the smoke bomb was thrown onto the pitch, what he did say was, he says, look, you basically slowed the game up. The outcome is yet to be known by the club, and the club have warned fans off making travel arrangements. People are still going to go. People will still go. Celtic fans will still go, even if there are banned. But Brendan Rodgers says, look, he says it's not decided yet, but it's serious enough for the club to put out that statement. I haven't spoken to anybody. I haven't spoken to Nicholson or anybody regarding the situation. But for those Celtic supporters that generally bond with their team and that have travelled near and far, you know, and you can name. I mean, I've met Paul the Sim many times over the years, and he's a good lad. And he follows Celtic every single game. They go to America, he goes to America. They go to Japan, he goes to Japan. You know, these are guys that it's their lifeblood. It's a way of life. Following Celtic is a life choice when you go to games. I've been there and I've done it. I've got the memorabilia, I've got the passes, and I've got the ticket stubs. When you go to every single game, week in, week out, you know, your whole life, your holidays revolve around Celtic. Holidays, pre-season tours, pre-season games. These guys, their whole life revolves. People will only go on holiday during international breaks. This is how dedicated they are to Celtic. They only go on family holidays during international breaks, so they do not miss anything Celtic. It is that level that we're talking about and that Brendan Rodgers is talking about. And they're the people that Brendan Rodgers says, look, they're the ones that are going to miss out. And he thinks it's wrong. And he also says that we've got a chance to change things at football, not just accept it. It's not acceptable. He says our supporters are amazing and we want to keep it that way. It is what it is. We'll wait and see when the outcome. It's more than likely that the outcome will come out on Monday. Anyway, Brendan Rodgers confirmed that Kieran Tierney is now unlikely to move to Celtic until the summer. As far as he was concerned, it was always going to be the summer that they were getting in Kieran Tierney. Now, we let a left back go in the name of Alex Bailly. And it's interesting because Alex Bailly is linking up with Cesc Fabregas. And I watched an interview with Cesc Fabregas talking about football tactics in the modern game. And it was interesting. Is there any news on actually signing a striker? Yes, there is, Ali boy. No, there's not. Of course there is. Yeah, we're signing this guy here. If you don't want to listen, just switch off and go away and do your morning stuff. I'm not even reading the comments anymore. When you look at it, Cesc Fabregas wanted Alex Bailly because Cesc Fabregas believes in the old style of football. He's a manager that went into Como and they hadn't been into the top flight for 21 years. And he says during his time, he saw massive changes. And he doesn't like the way that football's changed. He doesn't like the stats. He doesn't like the numbers. He basically says when he came through, and this is why Alex Bailly wanted to move to Como, because after talking with Cesc Fabregas, he said that it suits his style of play and the way that he sees football being played. And the Spanish way of playing, you could say. And Cesc Fabregas is dead against this tactical thing that's came into the game. And I think that Brendan Rodgers is sometimes guilty of getting taken down that road, rather than allowing players to have the free movement. Could you imagine Henrik Larsson having to deal with stats and everything the way that the modern player does? Could you imagine Henrik Larsson? Having to deal with people saying you've got to play this position this way, you've got to play it that way? Henrik Larsson would never have been as prolific a goal striker as he was if he had to. I mean, Seth Fabregas basically said, look, any player can play any position now because you're told this is what you do then, this is what you do then, and you're told the route of play. When this guy gets the ball, you move here, and then this. It's all laid out. There's no freedom anymore for football players. And says Fabregas says that he hopes that the young guy that comes in the name of Alex Bailly can be moulded into that type of player. Anyway, we move on to Celtic transfer talk. It was all going in a flow. Celtic have been linked with this guy. Yep. David Celtic. Even with his name, we should sign him. With his name, we should just sign him for that. Slovan Bratislava player. There was a few people said last night that we should sign him. And then the Daily Record put out a thing last night that said that he's now on the list. Which actually had me then saying, has Matthias Witzgarden been priced out the market for Celtic? Has he ultimately been priced out the market? And we should have paid the money for Mavovsky. What's Mavovsky doing now? I mean, people say we should have paid the money for Mavovsky. Everyone's hindsight's a great thing. We went for Adam Ida. Nobody was complaining about Adam Ida at the time. Nobody expected Kyogo to go out this window. But anyway, it is what it is. So, after Alex Bailly has left Celtic, right out the door after that, Lewis Palmer walked out the door with an ever-decreasing squad at Celtic. It looks like we're going to have to get another couple of players in quite soon. Anyway, the young guy, he's not young, he's 23-year-old, has bagged 15 goals for Slovan Bratislava this season, include 5 in the Champions League and the qualifiers. So he can score at Champions League level, and he's probably priced around about the right price bracket for Celtic to go and make a move for him. He found the net against Dynamo and Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. I am reading. So it looks like Celtic have changed once again late in the window. And I wonder if this guy was actually on the radar before the season even started. It really is getting me thinking, is you know, it's fine seeing players in the Champions League, but you have to remember, we've seen a goalkeeper that played us in European football, and he was absolutely fantastic. And he came to Celtic, and he was woeful. We ended up letting him go for nada. I'm just getting really wary of the type of the lateness of the transfer department at the moment, and I just think that a lot of Celtic fans are getting a bit pissed off at it too. Anyway, the left back area is another area that was being spoken about. Now, Benfica are now in talks with the left back Terrell from Manchester United. According to in Portugal, Celtic were linked with the Manchester United left back, but it looks like he's now going to Portugal. So Celtic are still no further forward when it comes to a left back. No further forward whatsoever. Anyway, 5 in the Champions League, say 2 more than either scored this season in the Champions League. It is. But that was in the qualifiers. The majority were in the qualifiers, Lanky. Anyway, the breaking news this morning is Matthias. It looks like he's been priced out the window again for Celtic. Benfica have set their eyes on the Celtic target, Terrell, from Manchester United, the left back. So Celtic are now scratching their heads saying, who are we going to get in left back within the next couple of days? Brendan Rodgers says that Pyro needs to be cut out because there's many fans that have went to Celtic over the years. Alex Bailly leaves Celtic to go and play for a man that he thinks, and Celtic are now looking at the Bratislava striker for £8 million. Will he be the man to bring it Celtic goals going forward to the end of the league? I have no idea. And on that note, I am done and dusted for this morning because I'm off to the airport. On that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.
Lit. Roll up to the party, roll up to the party, roll up to the party, roll up to the lit. Roll up to the party.